and welcome back to Car Design Dialogues Europe. My name is James McLaughlin and I'm the editor of CDN. Now, we're about to get into our session, next session of the day, Technology Meets Materials. But before that, we're going to run another poll, which I hope you get involved with. It's mildly controversial, but we like a bit of controversy here at Car Design News. So, which trend in car design would you like to see much less of? Minimalism, SUV coupe crossovers, giant touchscreens, light bars, or other? And if you've got another opinion about crime against design, as it were, please throw it into the chat. And we'll be reading out we'll look at the results of that a bit later in the day. Now, on to the session, which is Technology Meets Materials. So from giant touchscreens to subtle ambient lighting, Car Design News has invited interior design experts to talk about the enormous potential of embedding technology in the car and to discuss how various materials can make that happen. And our esteemed panel includes Lars Falk, who's a lead designer at Lynk & Co. Nick Hull from Coventry University is the Associate Professor of Automotive and Transport Design. Torsten Sluis is Global Director of Design at NBHX Trim Group. And Thomas Bouveret, I hope I've said that right, my French is appalling, Head of Interior Design at DS. Welcome, guys.
Pleased to join you.
Hi, James.
Hey, James.
Good to have you with us. I think, Thomas, it might be nice to start with you because we've literally about 2 weeks ago spoke about your last, your newest project, which is the DS4, which is going to be featured in depth, actually, if I can just plug our interior design magazine, Interior Motives. But technology and the marriage of technology with materials is quite an interesting proposition in the DS4. And I wondered if you could talk in general terms how you sort of those two elements work together to produce what is a very, very well resolved interior design concept and dashboard and everything.
Yeah, for us, for the DS brand and DS strategy, it's really to push again the fusion between the technology and the design himself, and to have in fact some kind of mix between some soft piece and some hard piece, and at the end to have a global rendering and global overview with this kind of fusion between technology and French savoir-faire with some super nice laser. Maybe some other material like really high quality fabric. So this is a challenge, and we know everybody knows it's not so easy because you mix some plastic piece with them many push and many function like that, and with some kind of live material. Laser, we speak about in French, is the matériau vivant. It's live material, so it's not so easy to combine both. So, but we try the maximum to push the fusion between both. For the end, to have just an overview about color trim, nice material, and technology together.
And the challenges that presented. Could you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so we have two cases for DS4, so we try to have only one masterpiece for the dashboard and to have all the function on that and to integrate well on the dashboard with the clear interface with the laser to be sure the feeling at the end is like a fusion between one masterpiece and one laser piece. And on our concept car, so revealed last year, unfortunately it was the first time for the lockdown in the world.
Yes.
Unfortunately for us, but the name it was ASLS, so Aero Sport Launch, the show car. So we apply the projection instead to have a screen inside the concept car. We apply a projection. So for the dashboard, you have 3 projector to have all the information on the dashboard, but without some black screen. So this kind of effect, and we are working on.
Wonderful. I think one of the interesting things is how you've kind of the dashboard itself is one big sort of, a curve of kind of lovely material on the screen is sort of integrated into it. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit about the thinking behind that, because I think it's a nice contrast to some of the work at Lynk & Co, which we'll move on to in a minute. So, sorry for you, Thomas.
Yeah. So for the you mean about the contrast?
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean about the kind of the integration of that screen into the
Yeah.
dashboard,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's all of a piece, isn't it? It's one kind of big
Yeah.
curve. I think that's quite interesting.
It was a challenge to have the screen fully integrate in the volume of the dashboard. So for sure, it's not easy because we work on some big screen or not so big, but it was really a challenge to don't have the floating effect of the screen,
Mm.
and so that's why the dashboard is a little bit high, maybe higher than some other car. But after, the feeling is really interesting because we have only one line to wrap around to wrap the cockpit, the full interior cockpit, and then to just have a simple and pure treatment of the screen, just flat and clean, and to mix with some really soft effect of the soft piece of material. Leather is soft, so for us, if it's soft, it must be visually soft. So
Mhm.
that's why we go at the extremely expression that a really soft effect on the soft piece or leather or fabric, and then if the material is hard, it must be adjusted shields and refine detail and touch it, and just to have a fusion with not so many pieces to have a clear message, or at the maximum, yes, just a simple message for the customer.
Mm, mm. Thanks, Thomas. And Lars, if I could just bring you in here. I was watching just before we got the session started. I was watching the very short clip about the Zero reveal, and it's a very different approach to the technology. So you've gone through a very big screen. I think it was 15.4 inches. I think it was inches. It certainly wasn't millimeters, but yes, it was a it was almost like a design centerpiece, if you like. And I wondered if you could explain a little bit about the thinking behind that. And then perhaps in tandem with what your customers, because it's a very different model, you're not pure car ownership, it's a membership idea, how those two things work together.
If we start with the screen, that resonates very well with the expectation of the Lynk & Co customers. It is a car, it's a new car brand, as you all have heard, I think. Just aiming for the young generation of Chinese and eventually also global European and American customers. So eventually we are transforming into a fully global car company. To put something like a advanced, modern, big and large touchscreen right in the center of the car is, of course, to really resonate with expectations of this customer group. There is a lot of connectivity services connected to the whole vision and the idea and the philosophy of this car brand.
Mm.
And like you said, this builds on at least when the car company will be introduced here in Europe, on more of a sharing model where you are rather paying a monthly subscription to have a Lynk & Co, which is a completely hassle-free way of car ownership, the car ownership of the future, basically. And this business model will eventually also be deployed and explored further on in China. It's very interesting. I mean, I talked to my parents about this, how practical it will be for them to have a car. They are not, of course, the younger customer.
No, true.
But how tempting it will be for them to have a ownership with a car company. The OEM takes care of basically everything, and they pay a monthly subscription fee. I think it's extremely modern and very attractive. Certainly not for all car brands, but for Lynk & Co, it's a beautiful idea.
Well, I think that taps into something about materials as well, because if the car company is taking care of everything, then the materials need to be, well, there needs to be a kind of longevity and hard wearing, because if it's not, if you're going to continually pick up repair bills for things that are not like, it kind of punctures the business model. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit about how that informed material choice.
We are still, I would say, learning as we are going with the whole Lynk & Co brand and the journey of this brand. And our color material expertise team, led by my friend and colleague Anders Schacks, is working extremely hard on the vision of sustainability and really pushing the agenda and the envelope for sustainability for this car brand. And of course, it comes top down from Mr. Peter Håberg and Stefan Rosén as well. This is extremely vital part of the Lynk & Co brand and the vision of the whole company. As we are aiming, as I said before, for this very young customer clientele, the generation Z, we know that there is much bigger open-mindedness to new, innovative, modern materials that are highly sustainable than maybe compared to more traditional car customers that are a bit older. I should mention that the idea about Lynk & Co, when it's being introduced and rolled out in Europe, is that you also can, and many of you have seen this on YouTube clips, and that you are also able to share your car when you're not using it. Our research has shown that cars are standing still for 92-93% of the time. And then you could rent out your car through an intelligent app in your mobile phone. And then, of course, how to maintain materials clean and not dirty when you lend it out to someone else is a really important issue. Bacteria and the whole situation we are all experiencing right now with the COVID-19.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really interesting question, because at the moment, I mean, most of us are trying to avoid public transport and avoid, shared spaces as much as we can because of the pandemic. But I suppose that was a question I had lined up for later, but we might as well get into it now. This idea of how a material innovation can deal with questions of hygiene. And Lars, you may kick off, but I'm sure the other guys have got things to say on that point.
Maybe we hand over to some of our colleagues.
Okay. Yeah, no.
But I'm happy to come back to this topic.
Torsten, why don't you jump in? You've been sitting patiently there in the background.
Yeah, I think the new approaches on materials, that's quite significant, because things which had been a complete taboo topic in the past, that at the moment got basically back and was rethinking. I mean, who ever had imagined that PET bottle materials are entering into the car? I mean, we have seen several examples for this, and there's more to come, because I mean, having said that, with a PET bottle is probably a very easy approach, but knowing also, at least in Germany, it's a tendency to go away from PET bottles and rather go into glass bottles. So what if the industry is developing into PET bottles, and then there are no more of those? Yeah, and so that's basically a topic where we are also working on, looking for opportunities to getting other materials in there, because plastic surfaces are not always supposed to be the premium surface to be considered. So how to get also real materials like wood or other stuff back into the car? Is there clever ways of integrating leather? How do those materials interact then with technology? Because having just a black screen somewhere in the car and the continuity with a piano black surface and so, I mean, we are already beyond that. And so how do we make these kind of materials play together so that you get a complete car harmony, like you know it from your living room? You might have some tendencies, some strategies where technology disappear completely and it just pops up again. So that's a huge field of research, of brainstorming to be done, working very close also with the engineers on how to integrate it in a clever way, and also working close together with the OEMs, because also they have different strategies. Some of them, they would like to have it very visible, the functions. Some, they want to have it as a no-show option, so that you just on proximity, they appear. And also this is a challenge in then going into the HMI field. So it's a very complex field, and it's very interesting and exciting, and it goes far beyond color material. It goes more into being a product designer with material, and that's really, really exciting.
Could you share any details of any live projects you're working at the moment, Torsten? Not necessarily top secret ones, but anything that, you know, any good examples for the audience would be great.
Yeah, so good examples are, of course, light integration. Light integration is, I think, the first step what you do. The next level will be then, of course, when you do real material studies, combining light integration and touch functions. Yeah, so that you have icons appearing and so on. And then it gets more to the more, let's say, far distance, which is how to integrate display information with real material. Is that, in terms of resolution, feasible at all? Or do we need to find smart ways, like, for instance, transferring from a screen surface into a real material surface, which I think personally is also a very nice and smart way to deal with it. And those are the topics we're working on.
And Nick, you hail from sort of the academic side of things, but it's interesting. Your role spans sort of two continents, where you've got the Coventry students and you've got the Nanjing students. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how you're seeing the ideas and innovation come out of those courses, in terms of this intersection between materials and technology, and whether they resonate with some of the things that maybe Torsten mentioned there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the COVID-19 crisis has kind of accelerated quite a lot of trends, and the trends we were seeing before in terms of color, like use of rose gold as a decor color, has a function now in terms of its bacterial qualities of using copper surfaces and so on, and also the trend away from leather to vegan friendly interiors is quite a strong trend which is coming through, and so for luxury vehicles it poses new questions of what do you offer instead of leather as a material.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting having insight into both our course in Nanjing and also in Coventry, and the interplay between the two groups of students. I would say in some terms the students in the UK or European students, maybe their knowledge of some materials is a little bit wider than some of the students in China. But the students in China are kind of more open to other kind of new trends. With most of them, they come from within Jiangsu province, so they're familiar with Shanghai, Nanjing, traveling around in that region often. So there are interesting kind of differences there. I think there's much more openness to sort of shared vehicles from Chinese students. They seem, every project they will always kind of want to do a shared 4-person vehicle or vehicles which are a single person vehicle to just relax in. And there's always the idea that if you get in a vehicle, it's just to go to sleep or to relax in. And I think that's very different from what we see from European students, who they're kind of still propose interiors that you enjoy being in as you're traveling. And one of the main activities, if you're not driving it, is to actually just look outside, look through the windows. Maybe using the glass itself, the PVB layer between the laminated glass, and use that for new functions. So you can educate your kids as they're looking out the side windows. They can point on the glass and it will bring up information about that mountain or that building there. A little bit like sort of brown tourist signs.
Yes.
And that overlaying of augmented reality onto kind of head-up displays through the windshield as well. I think it's something that has huge potential for the future. So I think in 10 years' time, we'll look back and on this era of touch screens as very much a passing phase between the two technologies, where you're looking through a huge screen anyway. It's called the windscreen. And that can play a much bigger part. Of course, it's out of reach, so there have to be other HMI points to interact with it. But the fact that you're looking through a big screen, and maybe portions of that screen along the top or down the A pillar, which could be dedicated to display functions in a way that an instrument binnacle is today, maybe.
And it feeds in a little bit to back to you, Thomas, with your work with the DS4, and that being you seeing sort of the car as being a restful place, a place where you're not so bombarded with information so much as you are cocooned a little bit, and it's a time to have. I know we don't normally think of driving as being a particularly relaxing experience, certainly not in London, but I think it's an interesting goal, and I wondered if you could speak a little bit about that idea.
Yeah, the idea is to just focus on three pieces. We speak about masterpiece, or the piece as I mentioned a little bit before. So that the masterpiece on the dashboard. So only one blade to have the function. And just to go back with the Torsten comments about some smart material, on some innovation about material. Yeah, we think also about it, and the most sorry, some noise here from. So the most important point is to combine UX with this smart material, because even if now we have the technology to put many function on their skin with some new material and sustainable material, etc., there is so much misuse in the cockpit, so it's really difficult to control and to define the good function on the good place with the good interaction. So even if you want to have all the function well integrated, even under the skin, you need to control the misuse. So for just to go back to DS4 interior, so the masterpiece, finally we decide to put some micro switch, because based on our customer feedback, if you want to have a full sensitive surface, it's really difficult to control, and you can have so many misuse, and even for some haptic reason, you can really feel that you have an activation on some micro switch instead to have just a touch surface interface. So that's why we go back to the micro switch, so mechanical switch, but really a short activation. So we have just this piece on the dashboard, and then the challenge on the door was to package the toggle switch, toggle windows lifter, and the side vents. So the vent it on the door is to really get a wider effect. So if we move the vents on the door, so we have more continuity between the dashboard and on the door. So that means we get at the end, as you mentioned, James, the cocooning feeling. So we wrap around. We try to turn again between the door and the dashboard and the door. And the last piece, it's on the console. We have a new infotainment pilot. So for us, it's a smart touch. So it's 5 inches screen to control. So the central screen on the dashboard, and to have some kind of new routine. So you can configure many functions. So like that, you just have one movement to have your function. You don't need to go in 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. Sometimes it takes time if you have a function in your infotainment, but you need to go in some different kind of layers. So it's some kind of a driver distraction. So we define one new infotainment. So one slide, and so you can have your call with your wife or your navigation, etc. And so we work a lot with ergonomy reason, and we put in fact just the intention of some 3 piece. So that means after you can just have a rest time, quiet time in your car. You drive on the highway, and you just be not so you don't have not so much information. So for us, it was really important. It's what we expect when you are in the DS, to get this kind of serenity design, serenity feeling. Okay, you just feel good, and you just want to drive with this car.
I suppose it would be quite instructive, I think, to move on to this idea of ambient lighting and lighting design,
Yep.
and how that plays with materials. Maybe if I could come back to you, Lars. You haven't spoken in a while, but could you talk to us a little bit about the Lynk & Co strategy when it comes to lighting, but specifically how it sort of interplays with materials? Because, as we know, materials react to light in different ways, and you can end up with a real horror show if you get it wrong. But maybe if you could speak a little bit about that, and from the Lynk & Co perspective.
We realized within the Lynk & Co design studio that this is one of those areas where we really can stand out, and we really want to be leading in this area. Our HMI design team, led by Christine Goll, has set up a work group with designers from all the teams in the studio that work completely cross-functionally, monitoring innovation, research together with the color material team, really scouting on what's happening with new exciting startup companies, both in Europe and in China, because we really want to be seen as a leading car company within the field of ambient light and emotional light, I should say. And there is so much happening there right now that we are exploring and experimenting with, building prototypes and mock-ups for our future car models, which I, of course, cannot talk about, even though I wish I could. The first Lynk & Co cars that came to market, being the 01, 02, 03, and 05, 06. It's a simple naming structure, so it's easy to remember. On those cars, I would say that we are compatible with the expectation of the customers. With the coming cars from the Lynk & Co brand, we want to be leading. I know that's a big declaration of intent, but we are very determined to do this. We feel we can. We really would like to own. We are eager to own and be seen as a leader in this area. So it's all very exciting. There's a lot of prototyping and experiments going on, and we have a fantastic team of prototypers within Christine's team that are building mock-ups that are amazing to see. I feel privileged to be part of this development that is happening right now. The car industry has always been evolving and it's always been exciting, but the level of change and the magnitude of change that we are experiencing right now is, I realize that I'm part of something quite big right now. And exciting to be in a car company that is as progressive as Lynk & Co. When we have a top management in China that are extremely courageous, brave, and even hold us accountable for developing really futuristic solutions. That is exciting.
Your passion is evident, Lars. Thank you very much. And Torsten, maybe could I ask you to weigh in on that as well, because materials and lighting technologies is obviously something that we see is very, very important to kind of building a brand experience and making carving your own sort of niche out and identity in the market. But maybe you could weigh in on that particular subject.
Yeah, I share Lars' excitement because it's a new way also to express materials in the dark, because normally when you drive at night, you don't see expensive materials anymore. So that's nice to define a room, because also distances in the room are not known. So and then it's about how to orchestrate basically this function. Yeah, because just making it on off, well, that is already known in the past, and we have that even in the B segment cars down there. But how is the next level? So how do you orchestrate this function in basically also the more, let's say, expensive cars? So is it more just on off, or is it like a heartbeat, so that basically the car gets alive? So that kind of function, what you see in Welcome functioning out in the exterior, to integrate the smart way in the interior with this. Then also, which was taboo, was in the past making light going through a surface, yeah, through like a wood surface, through aluminium, through even carbon, yeah. And I think these kind of rules or boundaries, I mean, Chris talked yesterday about the boundaries and all this type of things, to just breaking this up, rethink this, and think about ways of doing it. So basically maybe doing material transparent, which is not transparent. Is that okay for the consumer? Because does he expect that is still real materials, like a wood material, or does he think, no, it's fake? So to balance this kind of values, when do you need maybe to have some interesting perforation, or maybe hybrid materials are coming more and more in space. So how can you maybe combine those materials that you basically have a mix between material the consumer believes, yeah, light can go through, but you still have very next to it the material which maybe he's not considering this being a backlit material, and finding ways together with the designers here to really find also the brand understanding, because each brand is dealing with this in a different way. That's super exciting, super interesting. and of course also challenging where it comes to the topic to package all this. And it's not packaged in terms of space, as most of you anyway know by heart as you're working in the industry. Also the electronic, do we have enough, let's say, capability in the boards available to have enough LEDs? Yeah, and this is also a very long-term thing where classic material were developed quite fast, but when it comes now to electronic integration, the complete process cycle time of developing those parts is a different animal anymore now. Yeah. So yeah, this is, I think, quite exciting. And also when you look into colors, yeah, I mean, in the past it was very sure that you have to get the brand color, and it's only allowed to have this really precisely defined color of the brand. Now, because consumers are dealing differently and they are basically paying a lot of money to have all colors available, that's also a challenge, especially for designers, to give this freedom to the consumers, but also not let it go overwhelming that maybe it's not looking so exciting anymore because it doesn't fit and it's just too much.
And thanks so much, Thorsten. I should say, actually, if you want to find out more about Thorsten's work, the guys at MBHX do have a suite that you can visit and get really under the skin of some of the stuff you were doing. I think I'm just going to take a quick look and to see if we've got material questions coming in from the audience. But while I'm doing that, I think it's come up a couple of times, actually, this idea of moving on from the screen, or at least that becoming a more integrated part of the car. And I wondered if you could just speculate, guys, how far away we are from doing that, to having these kind of seamless integration of materials and the technology that we require. Who could I start with? Well, Nick, you haven't spoken for a while.
Well, yeah, like I say, I mean, in terms of the timescale, yeah, it's difficult for me to speculate too much on that, and that you know, the supply side might be better qualified to give real information on that. But yeah, like I say, I think the idea of using the laminated glass in kind of new ways is going to be the way forwards, really, in many ways. I just want to come back on the lighting point, actually.
Yeah, no, please do.
Of wondering, really, a kind of question to Thomas and to Lars, or a bit of discussion about whether you're seeing now. I mean, we've had customizable interior lighting for some years now, and whether after this first generation of you know, customers being able to change the display lighting, colors of lighting, whether that's very much a first generation thing, and actually it's better now as we're going forwards that you know, customers are maybe aren't choosing to customize so much, and they'd almost prefer to have a really nicely designed solution that fits the brand and fits that particular model, with a limited level of customization of a higher quality, rather than being able to choose red or blue or green lighting. You know, it seems a bit kind of maybe first generation idea.
This is a great question for Thomas, I think, actually.
Yeah, we discussed about that 2 weeks ago with GMs, and in fact, it's clearly what we decide on DS4 is to avoid some kind of color, because we feel we have indirect lighting, we have the project indirect light on the material, so leather, TP, fabric, etc. And so we after many tests with many prototype, we feel that some colors doesn't fit very, very well with the color of the leather. For example, the leather, it's brown, and when you put some kind of green color at the end, is like pissing yellow color, so not so nice. So we decide to cancel it and to be sure the customer cannot choose this kind of color, because for us, after you don't have what we expect, so the global feeling of the control of everything. So we define 8 or 9 color of the interior, and it's our decision to don't let the customer to choose what he want to do, because at the end, soft mix are not so well, and sometimes even a little bit ugly. So this is what we wanted to control, even the color lighting, and to don't let the full color opportunity to the customer. Yeah, to be sure at the end it still match with our global color and trim proposal. I don't know if Lars is differently for the Link & Co, but for DS, it's what we expect.
Would be interesting to hear Lars's
Yeah.
perspective on that, because it's an interesting question.
No, I think when it comes to our brand, our declaration of intent for the future is to go so much towards car sharing and autonomous mobility that I can only see how those new technologies will be enablers for us to serve the customer in the most intelligent, user-friendly, and also with the best experience in mind when cars are traveling autonomously. Two cars are, for example, traveling together as a pair. And there you can get so much information that is safety-related, health-related, and whatnot. It's all those type of technologies that we are monitoring and keeping our eyes very close on in this company for the future. Of course, the movement into full autonomous drive will maybe not happen as fast as we are sometimes led to think when reading in media. But by 2030, we're expecting 20% of the vehicle to be fully autonomous. And that brings out a completely different scenario and use case when it comes to developing a car interior and all the functionality and experience that is expected.
Guys, there's a few questions coming in from the audience, so I thought I'd try and hook a couple of them out. This one's kind of quite an interesting question about memory material and whether it's actually feasible, whether it would be durable in the long term. This shape memory material, basically. Torsten, you're the materials expert. I think maybe you could speculate on that, or even answer it.
Okay, so you picked the easy ones for me. I understand. Yeah, good answer. Would be nice also to understand what's behind that. Yeah, because I mean, what is this material function-wise for? There's a certain life of this kind of remembering materials. So to be honest, I don't have experience if that will pass testing of lifetime of a car. So maybe that would be also something we can chat offline to understand also the function of what it should be, if it should be a switch or what's really behind this, because that's also important to know. And maybe there might be also alternatives available with the same idea, what you have in mind, which are already proved.
Thanks, Torsten.
You're welcome.
Guys, car designers, maybe you could talk about this one. This is actually from a colleague of mine, Andrew, who's got interested in this. How does the thinking on car UX and tech integration? How does that work in terms of well-being? I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I feel it is quite an interesting point, because we are bombarded with information, and there is probably some need to kind of turn the volume down somewhat on our lives somehow. But I wondered how that will feed into a sort of UX design strategy for cars going forward. Who could go first on that one? Thomas, maybe we could take.
You mean for UX? So for us, for UX, so for example, on the HMI infotainment, we decide to start with the first proposal in black and white. everybody says at the beginning, you are crazy. You have a really nice screen and a super high quality for the screen, and you would just expect a black and white. Yes, come on. Yes, why not? Go back to the starting point, and to have just a clear and precise infotainment information. So after, of course, you can propose some color and background, etc. And we, as I mentioned, so for the ambient lighting, we match the color of the infotainment. So that means if you want to choose for example, gold ambient lighting, we match the color of your infotainment. You have a wall feeling of the interior, so we don't disconnect both. But when you will have your DS4, so you will start with the black and white layer. So it was really important for us to don't have so much aggression about the graphic, because of course it can be cool and you can do what you want with some screen, but for us the time in your car, it's a rest time. We already have so many information with the smartphone, with the TV, etc. So it was important to have this kind of rest time in your car and to don't have so much aggression with your screen. So it was really a clear decision from UX to start with the first layer with black and white and some just a touch of gold color, and then of course the customer can change it and have different kind of option.
Wonderful. Guys, I'd love to keep going, but I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up there. We've run a little bit long, but I think it was worth it. There's just time for me to announce the results of our poll and which trend in car design would you like to see much less of. The clear leader on that is giant touch screens. Everyone's like to get back with those. So there we are. Okay. Yes, a big thumbs up from Lars. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks to Torsten, Lars, Nick, and Thomas for the session. We hope you stick with us. I'm going to take a lunch break now, but we'll be back a bit later with some more design reviews and some more discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye, Tim.